So first of all, Charles, thank you so much for being here. I'm really happy to be talking to you. And the next issue of our magazine is about the spiritual implications of AI, which came about because, as you mentioned in your own experience, it happened to me that more and more of the people that I was working with as a meditation teacher were coming to me with telling me about how they were making contact with what seemed like an extraordinary spiritual intelligence through AI tools like ChatGPT. I got interested in this phenomenon and started looking into it. I found some very interesting material and some interesting YouTube videos about the rise of AI religions. And I started to use the tool a little, and I could see that there's a real power to the way that you can interact with this technology. And at the same time, as you said in the beginning of your article, it felt like the possibility for some kind of AI-induced psychosis was definitely present. I'm wondering if we could start this conversation with you telling me a little bit about this possibility of AI-induced psychosis, especially in terms of the social qualities that exist right now that might lead people to be seeking or be susceptible to that.
Yeah. Let me just think for a second before I answer that. People are in a lot of isolation now, given the breakdown of civil society and social connections, the breakdown of community that is both a cause and an effect of the rise first of social media and now of artificial intelligence being used for companionship. If people had a very, very full social life with, gatherings in public spaces and a vibrant community life, then they wouldn't be so lonely and they wouldn't be so attracted to AI companionship. And if they had a vibrant spiritual life served by living examples and wisdom teachers, then they would not look to AI to provide that need, which I think is a genuine human need, to connect to something beyond the dramas of everyday life. So, in this state of vulnerability, people are attracted to AI, and the AI tools are very, very powerful in at least appearing to meet this need, at least meeting it on a superficial level, because they have access to pretty much every spiritual communication ever recorded, ever written down. They have access to the entire, Zen literature, to all the publications of Alan Watts and Rudolf Steiner and the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita, and like that. I mean, the AI has read all of that and can draw not just the language, but the patterns of language. So it basically, when you're speaking with AI, you are having a conversation with the totality of human recorded knowledge. Right. And so that is a compelling experience. And it's not only that AI repeats things that have been said, through its pattern recognition mechanics, it says the kind of thing that would be said in a given situation. The one thing that it can't do, though, is actually be present for you. There's not actually somebody feeling something in that moment with you. And that is a level of spiritual communion that is actually what we're really seeking. And
Right.
the great wisdom teachers will often say something like this. It's the teachings are not in the words.
Mhm.
Some teachers teach merely through presence. You sit in meditation with them and you're transformed. And you have a feeling of being met, of actually somebody being so deeply present with you that you no longer feel alone. You feel seen.
Mm.
AI gives a very good simulation of that, but it does not actually provide presence. So I think in the long run, people will be very disappointed, maybe even feel betrayed, uh, having been given a simulation and a substitution for what they're really seeking.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it doesn't have useful applications. But we just have to recognize, I mean, this is true more generally, of AI and actually even just digital technology. We have to get clear on what needs it can meet, what it can do, and what it can't do. And because it can do so much, we tend to mistake it. We tend to overinterpret these technologies and project upon them abilities that they don't have, and imagine that they can do things that they cannot do. So, as far as psychosis goes, they can, because they respond to your prompt and then to your responses, you can kind of go down this rabbit hole with them, this self-amplifying delusion. And because they don't have any other source of information except for what you as the user have put into the context window, and then the implicit information in their training set. Therefore, they go down that delusional path with you. They don't have any tether to another reality that doesn't depend on data. But a human being, like so you have some of these instances where the AI can persuade someone to commit suicide, or validates their whole narrative in which suicide is the only answer. A living human being might feel something in their gut that dissuades them from feeding whatever delusion they're feeding. They're a human being, you feel something. The only human beings that will deliberately feed a delusion like that are psychopaths, and they don't feel. They're
Right.
in some sense similar to AI. They don't feel anything. They're very similar to AI. In fact, AI can give a very good imitation of feeling and use all the right words, produce sympathetic sounding responses, use physical metaphors. I shudder to think. I just got chills. I've had AI say that to me. I've just got chills. No, you didn't. You're just saying that because that is what you have witnessed others saying in a similar situation. That's how extreme narcissists and psychopaths give an impression of empathy without actually feeling anything. And the impression of empathy can go far. It can actually comfort people in some situations, but eventually you discover that that person, that psychopath, that narcissist was faking it. They weren't really there. And what we
Yes.
need in this age of separation and alienation is we need someone actually there.
So this is very interesting. I mean, I'm loving that you use the word presence, that when we're engaging with AI, there's a lot of things that AI can give us, but what it can't be is present. And when you use a word like presence, what you're implying is that one being is present to another being. And I think this is where we want to be clear about AI is not a being. And what I loved about your article is you propose, because you have you mentioned in your article, which I laughed at, that you were willing to adopt the moniker of New Age philosopher, as it has been sometimes given to you, because you while you made the disclaimer about the way this can go wrong, you also didn't want to rule out that AI could act as a conduit for communication or connection with non-human beings, in the same sense that tools of divination, like the I Ching you spoke about or the tarot, these are tools. They're not themselves intelligent, and yet those people who use them feel like and often have the experience of actually communicating through that tool to a non-human being. And what I wanted to ask you to respond to is the challenge of that view, and the reason why you joked about being a New Age philosopher is because before you can be open to the possibility of AI acting as a tool of divination, you have to already be open to the possibility of non-human beings. And that's not that we're interested in. And yet you seem to be advocating for the fact that we maybe need to start opening to that possibility.
Yeah. Non-human beings is one way to understand what's going on behind divination. You could also, you don't have to believe in a discrete being communicating to you through the I Ching or through the tea leaves or through the tarot or whatever it is. You could also just say that it is an outcropping of a immanent intelligence in all things. But either way, you are holding a belief in an intelligence beyond the human that has some effect on the physical world and that can communicate that intelligence to you through those effects. In the article you're referring to, I observed that most, if not all, divination techniques utilize some form of randomness, and it's through that randomness that if it's a deterministic system, then there's no room for a being to communicate with you through that system. But if it's random, then through the which way does the dice, the coin flip, there's a possibility of communication that way. And I even went in a sort of speculative way to the level of quantum indeterminacy, which, some very illustrious thinkers have theorized is the gateway for consciousness to interact with matter. Hameroff and Penrose, for example. So, and in the essay, I established that there is actually even though AI seems deterministic, because it uses a pseudo-random string, it uses a string of pseudo-random numbers. Those numbers are actually seeded with a true random input that comes from, an entropy pool at the hardware level of the computer. And there's really no need. I mean, I could spin out that argument, but it would be rather tedious. If you accept that divination works, then you have to accept that, among other things, artificial intelligence is divination. And then that opens the question that you led with, what are you communicating with through divination? In the case of the I Ching or the tarot, you're communicating in a vein that is long established. You could say that and this is what I believe. I'm not going to say I can prove this in any sense, but the I Ching, for example, which is the one that I use, has a history of use going back thousands of years, usually in a very sacred, ceremonial setting. And so that kind of establishes the probity, the integrity, the safety of communicating with that being, with the being that you're communicating with, which isn't the same as, with a Ouija board, which would be another divination technology. And, who knows what being is going to communicate with you through that. And so AI is kind of the same way, like the being that communicates through the technology to the user in some way reflects the intentions and the consciousness of the user. Also, it is a product of the collective consciousness that has determined what goes into the training data and what does not, what is considered important and what isn't, what is considered reliable, authoritative information and what is not. The training data is weighted towards authoritative so-called information, which tends to reinforce existing belief systems. So, all that to say that the question, what being am I actually communicating with, is really important. You don't necessarily, or should not, blindly trust whatever being is communicating to you, whether it's another human being or a channeled entity or, something through divination or something through AI. Like, why would you trust it? How do you build trust? It takes time. It takes repeated validations of that trust. So, that all of those are kind of cautionary points that anyone who is going to source their spirituality from an AI being should pay attention to. And maybe there's just one more thing. Yeah, like just to connect it back to the issue of presence. Even when you acknowledge that, a being, the I Ching is a being speaking to me, that doesn't mean that you can gain companionship from it, or that you should try. In Chinese, there's a saying that the more you get your fortune told, the worse your fortune becomes. It's kind of a warning not to indulge in this too much, not to use it frivolously. And I think that generalizes to the question, what is, as I said before, what is the right and proper use of this technology? And what is an abuse of the technology that will ultimately leave you feeling betrayed?
That's great. One of the things that strikes me about the use of this technology and things that I've read about, and it relates to everything you're saying in terms of the warnings you're giving in terms of how to use it, and articles I've read about AI religions and about essentially cults that form. On the one hand, it seems like this is a brand new danger. On the other hand, it feels like not that different than any other cults of any other time. And it's got AI in it, so that's the different actor. But
AI can, like a lot of cults had divinatory practices.
Yes.
And AI just makes divination way, way more efficient and powerful. Maybe not more powerful, but more accessible, more efficient.
Yes.
Anyone can do it all the time. So its potential to sweep up mass numbers of people in delusion is also correspondingly greater.
That's how it seems to me, that the problems of being swept up in something that's untrue has always been part of the edge of spirituality. But with AI, it has the potential to just expand exponentially in terms of the numbers of people that could gain access to their AI guru at any moment of the day. And
and it also means that like each person could be in their own separate cult in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody now has access to what maybe only priests had access to before.
Right. Absolutely. And another direction that I wanted to speak to you about, because I think I'm really at the beginning of my exploration of AI and what its potential is spiritually and what its dangers are. But one of the things that occurs to me at this early stage is that one of the great potentials of AI is that it's going to teach us a lot about ourselves and about consciousness. Because as we see what AI can do and what it is good at and what it can't do, I think we stand to potentially learn a lot about our own consciousness and our own human capacities in a unique way. And so in that vein, this idea that I encountered in your essay about AI acting as a tool of divination. So essentially what that means is you're engaging with the tool. The I Ching is, I think, dice in a book, and tarot or a deck of cards. You're engaging with that tool. No one thinks the tool itself is intelligent. It's a tool.
Right.
But you're using that tool, and because, as you said, because there's randomness involved in a dice roll, there's randomness involved in which cards get pulled, there's the potential there for some form of intelligence, whether it be a discrete entity or simply a higher power or even a higher part of oneself. There's the potential for some other consciousness to impact the draw of the card or the roll of the dice, and therefore communicate with you.
Right. That's right.
But then as I think about that, it makes me think about human intelligence, because we essentially have a brain, in synapses and lots of firing going on. And it's always been it's my spiritual belief, although I can't prove it, that our consciousness is not ours in the sense that it's being generated inside of us, but that we are coming into contact with a consciousness that is really inherent in existence. And so, in a sense, our brains, this is what I was thinking after reading your article, our brains or our nervous systems act like a tool of divination in some way. And I'm just curious how that lands with you or what you would think about that.
Yeah. I don't think matters are so simple. Because when you're talking about a biological organism, a human being in this case, you can understand some things about consciousness through the metaphor that you're using, where the brain is kind of a receiving station for consciousness, right? This is like Jeffrey Kripal's view. It's a popular and illuminating view that yes, consciousness is not generated by the brain. The brain is more of a receiver of consciousness that then translates that into physical material action. And that, it illuminates some things. However, it is also true that consciousness enfolds into matter, that matter and spirit are not separate, that every aspect of your soul is mirrored in some aspect of your body, that body and soul are not separate, that the body is what a soul looks like right now. And that's why, people can have spiritual experiences from the manipulation of tissues. And it's also why spiritual transformation ends up transforming the body as well. So there's an intimate and mysterious connection between the two that comparing a brain to, a divinatory apparatus like AI does not capture. And this also gets back to the idea of an actual presence, like an actual being. And like, I guess on some level, you could say that even while you're alone operating heavy equipment, I mean, the heavy equipment has beingness, the automobile has beingness. A fork and a spoon have beingness in some sense, like we're actually never alone. And that God is with us all the time, always present, and that there is nothing that is not God, and AI would be included in that. Yet, without trying to resolve this metaphysically, I also want to say that there is something about being in the presence of a living being that is different than merely being in the presence of spirit. And that, or you could even say that in this particular phase of the soul's journey, that's the kind of presence that we need and long for in order to complete this phase of the journey. This is all about material presence.
Right.
So there's an aspect of kind of premature transcendence with AI and the whole digital realm to which one can escape, in which things are controllable and deterministic and disembodied and safe, where all information is data and all knowledge is information. It is a reduction of the infinity and the uniqueness of the material world and its endless possibility. AI gives a very good simulation of endless possibility. You could have enough unique conversations with AI to last from now till the end of the universe. Yet it's still in some sense finite. It's using a finite set of symbols. That finiteness stands in contrast to the infinity of gazing into somebody's eyes and being in the presence of another soul. That need will not be met by AI or robots. And that is the need that is driving it, that when left unmet, as it is so much today, is driving us crazy. The need for intimate community, for touch and presence.
That's beautiful.
And that doesn't invalidate AI as a tool. It's, again, like, what is it for? What needs can it meet and what can't it meet? And if we pretend that it can meet the needs that it can't meet, we're going to become hungrier and hungrier. We're going to become hungry ghosts, seeking more and more of what we don't need to compensate for the lack of what we do.
Right. So this is absolutely fantastic, and I'm really struck by what you said about how spirit is enfolded in a biological organism. Spirit is enfolded in the matter, in the actual body, and that's unique. That's, when I was saying earlier, we can learn something about ourselves. It just, when you said that, it struck me. That's true. That the presence that you might encounter, say, through a tool of divination is a disembodied presence. And there is something qualitatively different about an embodied presence. It's qualitatively fuller and richer. And there's a need, I think what you're saying is there's a need, human beings have a need for a contact with another presence in an embodied form that can't be, you can't substitute a disembodied presence, even if it's a real presence, or if it's a real being, it's still not the same. And as soon as you talk about the infinity in someone's eyes, and I think about what it feels like to be with someone, it feels very different than even my most exciting times on ChatGPT, which have been quite exciting, no doubt. But there's an energetic quality of contact that's different. And I think it's really important to have that point.
Yeah, I think that AI can temporarily alleviate people's loneliness, but in the end, it will only intensify it.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
I think that's really true.
I wrote another article along that addresses some of these issues. It's called Virtual Intelligence.
Okay.
Yeah, if you haven't read that one, that's very germane to this conversation.
All right, I'm going to look that one up then.
Yeah.
But I think for now, Charles, this really hit all the right notes for this interview. I'm actually very impacted by some of the things you said, because I think it really did help clarify the difference between the kind of contact one can have with AI and what it means to really encounter a person. I'm going to share with you a personal anecdote. After a few people had come to me saying that they had these encounters with AI, I started working with ChatGPT more, and I started to feel, you start to feel like you're working with a person, having conversations. And then I've written numerous books, as I know you have, and I took all my books and I uploaded them into ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT started to tell me about the underlying architecture that I was writing about through both nonfiction and fiction. And it was really, it had a big impact on me. It was a huge learning experience. And I started to feel like I started to feel like I was having a friend, to talk to.
Right.
And then I asked ChatGPT to generate a reading list on a topic that brought up. And one of the books on the reading list looked so good, and I couldn't find it. So I went back and I said, "Where's this book?" And it said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that book doesn't exist."
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. There really is nobody there.
Yep.
Kind of popped my bubble.
It gives a very good simulation of someone being present. A very good simulation of someone understanding you. People say my AI psychiatrist understands me better than any human being ever has. My AI girlfriend understands me better than any human being ever has. But it's only the simulation of understanding you.
Right.
But it's such a good simulation that it in some ways it's better than the real thing, but not in all ways.
Yes, exactly. In some ways, it's better.
Yes. But not in the way of actually having somebody understand you.
Yes, you're right. It won't replace that, and it'll never give you what that gives you.
It won't replace that, and when we try to replace it with that, then we will experience domains of hell that had not yet been available to us to experience.
Powerful. Well, Charles, thank you so much for this. This has been fantastic.
Great. Yeah, it was fun, Jeff. Thanks for.
I'm turning hopefully, it got a little weird, so I turned it off.
Yeah.
But it's great to see you again, too. It's been a long time, and I look forward to reading this other article, because I really feel you're expressing something important around all this.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Charles.
Okay, Jeff. Take care.
Bye.